Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for March's Driving Success. Yesterday on LinkedIn, I reposted a reminder and said April, and I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but it's March still, so we'll slow down. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 things to guarantee meeting fleet safety standards. We're going to go over 5 habits, kind of the overall themes, and then some things that you could do today after walking away from this webinar. Before we get started, I'll go ahead and just do my quick little housekeeping. We will be recording this webinar as you do with everyone, so don't feel like you need to take notes. You can always refer back and rewatch it. It'll be sent to your email, and it will also be available on our website and YouTube. If we have time at the end, I'm hoping we do. We have a lot to cover today. We could do some Q&A, but if we don't get to that, we run out of time, feel free to follow up via email. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get started. So I want to talk about like why fleet safety is seeming to get a little bit more difficult than it has been, in the past couple years. And it's really just, man, the FMCSA has been really throwing some new regulations out at everyone, specifically a lot around driver files in particular, with the English language proficiency. Maybe I need to take a test on that. I can't speak today. The non-domiciled driver's license, and the list goes on. So with more regulations coming forward, it's just more to keep track of. It's more to have to make sure you're checking that box and meeting that requirement. There's also, the most data and the most available systems for companies to be utilizing. We know we live in a great time now where we're able to collect data points on so much, a lot more than we used to be able to, from harsh braking, from cell phone usage to, preventative maintenance features, detecting when a vehicle is about to break down. There's just so much more data out there that we're able to track as an industry, which means that there's possibly some more systems as well that need to be managed. There's also just higher expectations. I feel like, the industry is really going in a positive direction of, more and more companies are trying to do more than just the FMCSA standard. And that's kind of reaching across the board where one company may be doing the minimum or maybe not even meeting the minimum compliance requirements. But the majority of the industry seems to be always wanting to be doing more. And you can see that with like MVR monitoring. A lot of companies are implementing that. It's cost effective, and it's just an easier way to manage your drivers. And then there's, the flip side of just safety gaps often go unnoticed until an audit or an incident happens. With all the new regulations, a lot more data that we're collecting, it could just be that it's hard for an individual to look and review and see, where those gaps are, until an audit comes, across their desk. So, we'll go ahead and highlight the top 5 habits that I think, every fleet safety manager should be doing in order to be, have not only compliance, but safety at the top, as a top priority, and making sure that that's being executed every day to the best of his ability. So the first habit that a company utilizes is they're using technology that fits their fleet. I think this is a really big problem for a lot of companies where they are using a system because at an old company that they used to work for, or their buddy who works for a trucking company, ABC, uses this system. And they're completely different companies. The goals are different, the cargo is different, the way that the procedures and the procedures are set up are different, the way that the hierarchy of who takes care of what is different. And so when you have technology, you're utilizing technology that just doesn't fit your fleet's goals. It could just be a waste of time, a waste of money, a headache to have to sit there and kind of like pretend that you care about all this extra data that does nothing for your fleet. Your data that you are collecting should drive your decisions. So if you are just have a lot of fluff that you're just looking at and it does nothing for you, it's more noise than anything, and it's a lot harder to dig through an immense amount of data points to get to that ultimate goal of yours. Um, One size fits all solutions can create blind spots. So if you're not utilizing a technology that is customizable to an extent, there's some wiggle room in there of how you can utilize that software or that technology. Sometimes that can lead to, blind spots. Again, what is your company's ultimate goal? It's safety, but there's components in there that need to get broken down. Um, you want to make sure that the right tech aligns with your fleet size, risk profile, and your goals, and really just the overall, culture of the company that you are, or the fleet that you're trying to manage. Some companies prefer a different style and approach to data, a different style and approach to onboarding, user experience. There's a lot that goes into it. So making sure that you understand that the technology you're utilizing is going to fit for your fleet. A good example, real-time example of this is cell phone distraction. A lot of people will just quickly go throw cameras into a vehicle, which, that has issues in itself with the driver facing cameras, right? We get some pushback from drivers here and there about that, but that potentially might not be solving the problem. Lifesaver Mobile, a partner of ours, they had a company who was using cameras or really wasn't helping or doing anything for them. They implemented their system, and cell phone usage went way, way down, and incidents went way, way down. So it was way more cost effective, and it was the right technology for their goals. So just making sure that you step back and look at legacy kind of technology that you might be utilizing and seeing if it's still a good fit for your fleet is a good thing to be doing. So habit number 2 is starting at the beginning. Your driver onboarding is, before they even get behind your wheel, the driver is the one in the seat. They're the one operating that 80,000 pound vehicle. They're the one with the DOT number on the side of their vehicle that they're in the driver's seat of. So making sure that they're fitting the safety standard of your company, the safety standard of the FMCSA, and there's not going to be any issues, up front, is going to save you in the long run. If you're skipping steps, missing, you don't want to go send them for a drug and alcohol test, and then they come back, with a bad accident, and you find out that they were under the influence. You may have saved time in the beginning, but now, one, you're out of compliance, right? That's your first issue. And two, now you have a larger incident on your hands that could have resulted in some injuries as well. So we want to make sure that we're not skipping a really, really vital step with those who are going to be in control of these vehicles. Incomplete onboarding, it's a long-term risk. It can lead to you being out of compliance during an audit, but it also is just that extra, level of your compliance and your safety go hand in hand. So if you're not in compliance, you can potentially be out of, missing steps for the ultimate safety goals. Um, Habit number three is a fleet has good checks and balances. They do matter. Creating that consistency across your fleet, managing expectations with every single person who handles and touches your fleet, whether it's your maintenance or HR who's handling driver recruiting or onboarding, your fleet manager who is the one managing the maintenance and the drivers and the ongoing management, making sure everyone's on the same page and they're committed and understand that they are going to execute the company procedures to really align with DOT compliance and your company compliance and safety. You want to, like I said, align those internal company policies to match what DOT is asking for as well. If it's clear across all of the pipeline from recruiting, HR, fleet safety manager, all the way down to the mechanic and the driver, it's going going to probably be a lot better of an outcome. Tracking what's due, completed, and overdue. So not relying on a driver for renewals, making sure you have a solid system for reminders, a way to check if a driver is gotten out of service or they had a license suspension over the weekend, not in a company vehicle that you're unaware of, stuff like that. You need to make sure that there's additional checks and balances and it's not just one individual who potentially could be in charge of that. And then you want to verify, not assume. Always verify. I think a lot of people have a habit of wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt, or they just, have faith in those that they work with, or faith in those who have held held the position previously from them. You always, if there is a sliver of maybe I should check that, you should probably just check it. Is kind of how I kind of see it. There's things that have to be tracked from a driver's license. There's annual MVRs, there's the annual clearinghouse, and there's things that need to be tracked on a periodic basis. So going back to that way of being able to track those in a good way, not like an Excel spreadsheet or Outlook calendar reminders can get kind of messy, can get kind of hard, especially when multiple hands are in the pot. The next habit is preventative maintenance. And before we kind of go into that, I just want to point out what the top 5 vehicle inspection violations were from 2025. This is coming directly from the FMCSA. So missing periodic inspection paperwork, brakes are out of adjustment or alignment, lights are not working, tires are leaking or under inflated, and then identification lights are not working. And I would argue that all of these, maybe not the missing periodic inspection paperwork, because that could, potentially could be on either or, but I argue that if you are doing your preventative maintenance and you're doing your DVIRs properly, that all of this could be very easily avoided here. So, some things, preventative maintenance, it is a safety tool. You want to be able to catch those big issues before it turns into something more. Deflated tire, that can turn into a popped tire on the road when your vehicle is traveling, 55 miles per hour down the road, carrying an 80,000-pound load, not 80,000-pound load, but the weight of the vehicle is 8,000 pounds. That could be a big catastrophe, especially if they're in a high traffic area, can cause some big major safety issues. So tracking your inspections and repairs consistently, having a good way to track all that, whether it's in whether it's a shared drive, whether it's a vehicle folder, whether it's a software solution that you're utilizing, and then being able to identify repeat issues early from those files. So again, what are you doing with that data? Kind of going back to finding that technology solution that works. You don't want to just store that information, but you want it to give you a little bit more of giving you a heads up right before it becomes a safety problem. Reduce your out of service events, and then support clean roadside inspections. So overall, having a solid preventative maintenance program over and over and over again shows less downtime. It shows less wear and tear on the vehicles. And it keeps the drivers on the road in a safe, healthy vehicle. And it keeps your drivers happy. I don't think, your drivers are there. They want to get from point A to point B. And if they have to swap out trucks because, the person before them didn't properly do a DVIR, or the maintenance crew didn't, do something that was reported, it can get a little frustrating for your drivers. And then the last habit, which we are doing today, is commit to ongoing education. As this industry evolves, and you can see that even from the end of last year to the the very beginning of this year, and then 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, with the clearinghouse, a lot of things are evolving. Companies need to be adaptable, and being able to keep up on regulations, whether that's through, following the FMCSA directly on like LinkedIn, subscribing to an email newsletter from a trusted like consulting company, following social medias, like DQM's LinkedIn, or connecting with peers who are active, is a great way to stay informed. Attending webinars like this, it really helps, even if it's not just about like new regulations that are coming out. It helps keep you, fresh, and brings new ideas forth. There was something on LinkedIn the other day. I can't remember exactly what the topic was, but it really got me thinking about a new perspective on something that I would have never organically thought of it that way. So it might not be necessarily like a huge regulation change, but it's really just a different perspective or an idea on a regulation, or finding out about new tools. And further with that is, having a solid training program, not just for your drivers, but for your fleet and safety as well. Those are beneficial training programs as well. Not for the drivers. It's good to keep up on, good habits, some tips, good ways to encourage your drivers to have good safety habits. So, going over the 5 habits one more time. So finding technology that fits your fleet and your goals, looking into technology that may no longer fit the need of your fleet, is habit 1. 2 is have a strong onboarding from the beginning with your drivers. Will help reduce any risk that comes along with those blind spots. Being consistent and having checks and balances. So utilizing a software, utilizing a system of some sort that will be able to tell you if something's missing, if there is a safety risk that is approaching, a good way to really track that information. Having a good preventative maintenance program, again, time and time again, preventative maintenance over reactive maintenance has really shown great benefits for fleets. And then ongoing education, which we're doing today. So we already got 1 habit down, that I'm aware of. I'm sure you're doing more already. So there's kind of three main themes across the board here that you can kind of look at with each of these habits is really that safety is built and not assumed. The fleets that are doing safety and compliance well have worked very hard to build the protocol, to build and implement systems and softwares, have built that pipeline and that communication between everyone who touches the safety and compliance of a fleet. They built that and have made sure that they're implementing and checking on it and making sure that it's being followed through on essentially. Um, Gaps are easier to fix early, so prevention over reaction. So not just preventative maintenance, right? But preventative onboarding, preventative driver risk, having a way to track like incidents. For example, if you're tracking your incidents and you have a lot of drivers who are, you showed that in the month of February, you had a lot of drivers who had some fender benders or something like that. You can look at that data and go, okay, maybe I need to do some more training on, safe following habits or safe driving habits. Maybe you had a lot of drivers who, weren't logging their hours of service correctly or something like that. Maybe, that's a compliance issue. That's a safety issue. If you're not being tracked, your hours aren't being tracked properly, you can fall into not only compliance issues, but fatigue issues as well. So maybe you just need to do a refresher on, hours of service. So being able to catch those issues and those gaps ahead of time is going to help reduce the risk for a bigger issue down the line if those things keep building up. And then having the right system, supports better decisions. Going back to this, having the solution that works for your fleet. Not everyone needs a huge, big, fancy, overly complicated system to get what they need from their safety data. Sometimes, sometimes a shared drive works and it works, but is it the best solution? That's something that you're going to have to look into, but just making sure that, you're not just utilizing a system because your friend or your buddy or your colleague who works for a different company is utilizing that system. There's a lot of solutions out there, and just finding the right one for your fleet, your goals, that's the biggest point. So three things that you can do today, aside from the habit that we're already doing our education, right? Is the first is you want to review your current safety process. Look and see if you even really have a outlined safety process. Sometimes it's just, some of you guys have been in this industry for years and years and years and years, and you're just on autopilot at this point. But taking a step back and kind of reviewing your protocols and your safety process may highlight some gaps. And with that, you want to try to maybe identify at least one gap. There might be one. We all like to think that there isn't, but the potential that there's a gap is there. It could be a very small one, right? But we want to identify at least one gap. And then from there, either explore a solution if it's an easy, just like process fix, or explore potentially technology that could help with a process. Sometimes it's a process issue, sometimes it's a process issue because you don't have a solution in place that could help with that. So kind of three things that you could do, after the webinar on Monday when you come into the office and kind of just want to reconvene, see what your week is gonna look like. So I do have like two recommended tools. We have our driver file management software and our asset management and fuel tax reporting software. These are both great tools to utilize to help with, collecting data, giving you the information you need to make those informed decisions. It helps with, process workflows as well, both on the side of driver files and for asset management as well. All right, we are we have about 5 minutes. I don't know if there's any questions. Feel free to throw it into the Q&A if anything, comes up. Like I said, we are recording this, so I'll go ahead and send you the recording once I put my fancy intro and outro onto it. If you've seen a recorded video before. But that'll be sent via email and it'll also be available on our website. So, let me just check the Q&A or the chat to see if there's anything that comes in. And if not, we can wrap up a little early on this Friday. Perfect. All right, I don't see anything coming in, so I want to thank everyone for joining me on this wonderful Friday. Hope everyone has a fabulous weekend, and remember to stay safe, stay compliant, and keep driving success. Thank you, everyone.